204 Availability of electric service to non-residential customers from an underground residential distribution system. Electric service to non-residential customers from an existing underground residential distribution board system may be available. Customer should consult with the CPS Energy customer service representative for service availability prior to proceeding with any property investments or service designs. 205 Types of electric service and demand loads from downtown network system. A majority of the San Antonio Central Business District is served from the downtown network system that is separate and isolated from the rest of the electric distribution system due to its unique design. This system is totally underground and consists of multiple parallel circuits on the primary and secondary sides of the system. Service requirements from the downtown network system are outlined generally below and covered in more detail in section 1100. 205 1 Secondary voltage service for combination power and lights. The standard nominal voltage at a point of delivery is 208 Y/120 volts from a 4-wire, 3-phase grounded Y service. With approval from CPS Energy's Network Engineering section, a 480 Y/277 volt 3-phase service voltage or a 120/208 volt single-phase service voltage may be supplied. If approval is granted for a 480 Y/277 volt 3-phase service, a customer-built transformer vault or room on or immediately adjacent to customer's premises will be required, refer to section 1100. 205 2 Demand loads. Load serving capability on the downtown network system is determined on an individual basis and depends on vault or network grid design limitations. Prior consultation to determine service availability should be conducted with the CPS Energy customer service representative, refer to section 1100. 206 Number of services. CPS Energy will supply service at 1 point, through 1 meter, at 1 voltage class under its rate schedules, rules, and regulations. A building, other structure, or property served shall be supplied by only one service unless otherwise approved by CPS Energy in accordance with Article 206(1) below, refer to definition of building. Note 1. CPS Energy will not supply a building with an additional service where CPS Energy supply facilities are capable of supplying customers' total load at one service location. CPS Energy reserves the right to make final determination on the supply of additional services. Note 2. A service lateral, whether from a CPS Energy transformer, or approved tap box, shall be considered the same as a separate service for the purposes of these standards. 206 1 Additional services. Where CPS Energy deems it necessary to supply a building or structure with an additional service in accordance with one of the limited conditions outlined in A through D below, such installation shall also comply with the specific provisions outlined in Article 207 Note. In all cases, CPS Energy and the respective authority having jurisdiction, AHJ, must be in agreement. CPS Energy will make final determination on the supply of additional services. A. Special conditions. 1. Fire pumps that are legally required in accordance with the NEC and applicable codes. 2. Redundant service installations approved by CPS Energy where designed for the purposes of enhanced reliability. Note. CPS Energy will review all other special condition requests for additional services on a case-by-case basis. B. Special occupancies. 1. Multiple occupancy buildings where there is no available space for service equipment accessible to all occupants as determined by CPS Energy and the respective AHJ. 2. Commercial buildings whose length equals or exceeds 300 feet and whose services are located a minimum of 300 feet apart. 3. Residential apartment buildings whose length equals or exceeds 100 feet and whose services are located a minimum of 100 feet apart. 4. Residential properties where buildings or structures are separated by a minimum of 300 feet and the services will be located a minimum of 300 feet apart. C. Capacity requirements. 1. residential apartment buildings where the customer's service equipment exceeds a rating of 1600 amperes. Services may be located on opposite ends of the building or can be grouped in the same location. 2. Where customer demand loads exceed what can be served by one CPS Energy standard size pad mount transformer, refer to Article 203(6). 3. Other instances where CPS Energy deems it necessary to supply the building or structure with a separate service in order to handle customer demand loads. D. Different characteristics. 1. Where a load must be served at a different voltage, phase, or rate class as determined by CPS Energy. 207 Separate services supplied. Where separate services are permitted in accordance with Article 206, customer shall be required to comply with the provisions of Article 207(1) and 207(2) below. 207(1) Permanent plaque or directory. A permanent plaque or directory shall be installed at each service disconnect location denoting all other services or feeders supplying the building or structure, and the area served by each. 207(2) Fire barrier separation. A minimum 2-hour fire barrier is required to separate the areas served by each service. The fire barrier rating and construction shall be based on the building codes adopted by the City of San Antonio, even in those locations outside the San Antonio city limits. Refer to definition of fire barrier. Electrical wiring in buildings with multiple services shall not cross the fire barrier. The respective AHJ shall enforce this requirement. Exception 1. Fire barrier will not be required where an additional service is permitted by CPS Energy to supply legally required fire pumps. Exception 2. Fire barrier will not be required where separate services are permitted in accordance with Article 206(1) and all service disconnecting means can be grouped together in a manner approved by CPS Energy. In no case shall grouped service disconnects exceed 6 handles. 208 One building or other structure not to be supplied through another or from an adjacent property. CPS Energy owns service lateral conductors and or unmetered customer owns service lateral conductors supplying a building or other structure shall not pass through the interior or beneath another building or other structure. CPS Energy will not supply services with proposed designs that have customer-owned distribution attached to buildings on separately platted properties that are designed to cross property lines. Property owner with an existing service seeking to replat the property will be required to contact their CPS Energy customer service representative for a new service. Customer-owned service conductors are not permitted to cross property lines even when properties are owned by the same customer. 209 Metering. All service taken at the same point of delivery will be metered with 1 meter, or in the case of multiple occupancy buildings, with group meters. Additional services permitted in accordance with Article 206 may first have separate meters as approved by CPS Energy. 209 One Metering equipment. CPS Energy no longer provides single-phase, self-contained meter sockets to electrical contractors. Single-phase, self-contained meter sockets approved by CPS Energy are listed on Figure 1801 and may be purchased through local distributors. CPS Energy will continue to provide standard metering equipment such as self-contained, 3-phase meter sockets, transformer-rated, 3-phase meter sockets, instrument transformers, and standard instrument transformer enclosures at no cost to the customer. Any requests for non-standard metering equipment will be evaluated by CPS Energy, and if approved, must be furnished and installed by customer at customer's expense. Refer to Section 1800 and Table 1801. 209 Totalized metering. Where it is necessary for CPS Energy to supply service with more than one transformer in accordance with Article 203(6), and those transformers are located such that the maximum metering control cable length from each transformer does not exceed 20 feet, CPS Energy may provide totalized metering. If the transformers are located together and totalized metering is approved, additional customer expenses may apply. Refer to Section 1800. Note: Where multiple transformers are installed to supply customers' demand load, and the transformers are not located together, separate meters will be installed and metering will not be totalized. 209 3-metering location for service conductors. CPS Energy requires that service conductors be metered before entering in or being routed underneath the building or structure being supplied. Exception. CPS Energy will review proposed designs where special circumstances may require the use of meter rooms within the building for location of multiple metering equipment. Where CPS Energy approves such designs, customer shall be responsible for that portion of the service lateral conduit, S, under the building or structure. Service conduit, S, shall be installed as required to be considered outside of the building and shall terminate within 4 feet upon entering a CPS Energy approved electric meter room. CPS Energy may require customer to install spare conduits and to locate meter rooms on exterior walls as close as possible to the transformer poles. Refer to definition of conductors considered outside of building.